Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, the original science fiction horror film produced by Walter Wanger. It's actually Wagner, but you know, I like saying Wanger. Directed by Don Siegel, stars. And the pods, they wake up in the middle, or they wake up in the night, and then they take the people as they're sleeping and replace them with replicants. This was an obvious film that was making commentary on anybody communism
and
the Red Scare.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody? I know that this is an older film, but I really want to talk about this one because it's one of the most.
Well, I would say it's an older film, but there have been. I think the most recent remake was like within the last 5 years.
The last one I saw was Invasion with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig.
Right. That was that was about 10 years ago, give or take.
And then, but this one was. I mean, this one has been marked by the Library of Congress as being culturally significant, and it is considering the time that it came out. But also, it should be noted that I love this movie not just because it's just aesthetically well done. It's extremely well put together. The acting is terrific, and I love the ending when he's running through the traffic, screaming. It's fucking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a perfect example for those who are in filmmaking. Now, given that you remember the time period, early 1950s, because this was probably 55, early 55 to early 56, that they were probably, or they're probably 55 that they were shooting this thing. And this is a perfect example of how everything can go wrong when you plan for a movie. And yet they still managed to generate one of the greatest films ever put to celluloid. I would say if you did a top 50 of all-time movies of any genre, of all genres, Invasion of the Body Snatchers should be up in there. But yes, behind the scenes, so many things went wrong in this fucking movie.
Yeah, so many things went wrong, and a lot of people don't understand is when you make a film, you have millions of decisions, millions upon millions of decisions, and to make a good film, if you can get the majority of the decisions right, you can have a good film. And it's rare where somebody gets like all of them right. So that every choice they made, they had so many things that happened. Because first of all, they were granted a budget of $454,000. Their 24-day shoot, $454,000. And then
can you imagine that? Wait, can you imagine that? $500,000 in 1956?
1956. And
that's fucking insane.
So they went, and that was the budget that was secured, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're going with that. And then right before shooting, it got slashed to $350,000. So they lost $100,000 right before shooting. They were we'll only do 20 days, $350,000. And right off the bat, they're like, okay, well, these are the actors we wanted, so now we can't afford them. So now we got to we're going to pull some big names and get us attention. So now we got to pull people who work for less money. They were supposed to be shooting at location at the Mill Valley in California. And then they're like, well, now your budget's cut. You can't afford to shoot on location anymore. So right off the bat, they got to hurry up and start creating sets in the studio that they weren't even intending on putting together.
We're talking about $450,000, but I think after adjusting for inflation, it's like $5 million.
Yeah,
and
that's wild.
Yeah,
and $5 million is not a lot for a feature film.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, not today. Absolutely not today. I
mean, not today.
I think $5 million is still within the cutoff of indie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. For an idea, for those who don't know, that because the casting options of what they wanted to go were that Wanger was considering like Gig Young, Dick Powell, Joseph Cotton, and a number of other major actors. And then he was also considering for the role of Becky, like Anne Bancroft, Donna Reed, Kim Hunter, Vera Miles, a number of big names that he wanted to put in his movie. None of that fucking happened because virtually all of them were unknown, especially Kevin McCarthy, who went on to become a legendary actor in his own right, a legendary character actor. But Kevin McCarthy, was a nobody at this time.
Yeah.
And then this is what he managed to turn out. So yes, so, you slash someone's budget, you're fucking with a lot of things. And of course, Eugene was talking about the set construction, which
I mean, because you basically you lose 1/5 your budget right there. 1/5 your budget is just gone on it, and this wasn't like a hey the negotiating process, we're kind of going back and forth. No, you lost 1/5 your budget and you lost 4 shooting days because they would only fund 20 days. So you're like, well, those you still have to film those scenes. You have to figure out a way to make it work, and that's what they were able to do.
So wild. You love hearing these kind of stories about movies that start out like this. That you're trying to imagine being the director, especially at a time when I think 1956, the Hays Code was still in effect, wasn't it?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure the Hays Code was still in effect.
I think it's right. Okay. When did Psycho come out? I think it's like towards maybe the tail end. 63. Yeah, so the Hays Code's still in effect. Because I know Psycho was the one that killed.
Hays Code era?
Yeah.
Since you got probably knows the Hays Code in mid 1934. 1968 was when it went out. So yes, this was virtually right in the middle of the Hays Code. So given that time and the politics of movies at the time, especially the politics of studio heads, it was much, much different than it is now. So you had you were tapped as a director, you do have a level of power, but it's very much a top-down power structure. Shit rolls downhill, and you don't have much say, especially when the studio puts their foot down. So that's pretty much it. The idea of outside investing or private investing, like occurs today with tiny little production houses all coming together, that really didn't occur in those days. The studio pretty much controlled everything, and in this particular one, it was Allied Artists, which would, I think,
eventually
go on to become Monogram. And I know they have they're presently a dormant film production company. That's why they don't have a current name. But at those times, if you got slated for, you knew where the budget was coming from. It's coming from one singular source, and those big heads. Typically, it was one person, and or one person who led a board, or it was one person individual, and that was pretty much it. That's where it went. And if he didn't approve it, then you weren't getting shit. So you got to kind of deal with what you got, and it's a testament to Don Siegel's directing capabilities that he was able to pull this off and pull off one of the greatest films ever made. Given what they did to him at the very, very last minute, when he obviously can't argue. Most likely, choices like this were done because the studio may see another movie is more profitable, because this was technically like a science fiction horror film. There may be other movies that were more profitable, so budget was literally taken from his project and given to somebody else in order to help make that a better movie, because that movie was going to make more money. Maybe it was a drama or it was an action or whatever. They had better actors. So it was like, they don't need that money over here. They can it's just sci-fi horror, and they can just give it to somebody else. That shit went down all the fucking time. So.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, another thing is directors are fired all the time. You didn't have the Quentin Tarantino's, Christopher Nolan, those big name directors that are today that can kind of make their own demands on how they're going to shoot stuff. No, directors, they were fired. Most movies had multiple. I think Gone with the Wind had 5 directors, ending with Victor Fleming, and then he was the one that cleaned it up. And then you had The Wizard of Oz had a bunch of directors, and Victor Fleming got that one also. So technically, he got credit for directing both Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. But you said director, because they'll basically, hey, we're going to slash your budget. And you're like, well, that's not fair. Okay, well, you're fired. We'll fire somebody else. Like, directors did not have a say in stuff like that.
Johnny, go ahead.
You were saying, Eugene?
Yeah, go ahead, Eugene.
Oh, yeah, that's all I'm saying. Is like, so you had to work with what you got as a director at that time.
Mm-hmm. I was just gonna say, Johnny, you guys, did you know that Sam Peckinpah, the legendary director, had a small role in this film, right?
In the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
What did he play? What did he
He
play?
he was Charlie the meter reader.
I
A little bit of the ends of you catch it. That's fucking Sam Peckinpah. Yeah, that guy right there. One thing I wanted to chat about on this one was we do like to talk about the societal impact of particular films. We have always regarded horror films as kind of a barometer for the anxieties of the nation, sometimes the anxieties of the world, things that are going on. And at the time, 1956, America was steeped in what was I think now commonly known as the Red Threat, or the advent or the tide of communism, or McCarthyism, as it were. When everybody was a fucking commie, you just pointed them out. It was like the Salem witch trials on a political level, and just a bunch of crazy shit going all around. And it's interesting.
Where that comes from.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I wanted to bring this up because people have gone back. Obviously, they look at this film and it's considered culturally significant. You can see the fucking parallels, between the rise of communism and the rise of McCarthyism in response to communism, and of course the fear of the loss of identity, the fear of the loss of solidarity and autonomy. Everybody conforming into a singular kind of like automaton that just kind of goes along and does whatever it's told, and it's just a one more gear in the machine. And obviously the parallels are there. They're almost transparent. But the author of the book, Jack Finney, and the guy who did the adaptation, the screenplay, Daniel Mainwaring, intended absolutely no political ideology with this movie. That it was not in their heads. It was not in Jack Finney's head when he wrote this fucking thing that the aliens, or sorry, that it was an allegory for anything going on in the United States at the time. But we've looked back and we've seen it. Now, there was another individual, god damn it, I cannot remember his fucking name. There was an author who wrote a book that was all about the rise, and I think it was back in the late 80s. He wrote a book on the rise of people looking back on film and seeing allegories for what was going on in the world at the time, and just kind of like applying. He's like, oh, this must have been like an allegory for the civil rights movement. That's what it had to be. Kind of like X-Men, the comic. It was obviously just an allegory for people who are gay, or racial minorities.
Well, but didn't Stan Lee basically say that's what it was?
The problem was that he didn't say it at the time. And
but just because he didn't say it at the time doesn't mean it's not accurate. Like whenever
this is true, but he said it in response to someone bringing that up. That was it this, or was there a deeper meaning there? So Jack Finney was asked, was there a deeper meaning to what you wrote? He said, absolutely not. It was supposed to be a fucking alien movie, or an alien story. That's all it is. Aliens come down, they try to take over the world by replacing people, and then they realize that they can't live here. Humans are too hostile, and their lifespans are too short, or the aliens' lifespans are too short, so they end up just leaving. That was his story. That was supposed to be his War of the Worlds. That was it. And
Well, it's to me, it's kind of like the term the author is dead or the artist is dead. That once an artist creates something, that they put it out there, and then it's more based on how people interpret it. So it could be like the author never had an intention, but when people look at it, that's what they see. It's just like if you make a horror film and then everybody laughs and they see it as a comedy, then your film's a comedy.
Yeah, I have an issue with that. I mean, if I write something and somebody interprets it a different way than I intended it, well, they're just wrong. You have your right to your own interpretation, but if I write a film that's about puppies farting rainbows and you think it's about cats sniffing daisies, well, obviously you're wrong. Just because your interpretation is that doesn't mean that that's what it means. No, that may be what it means to you, but the original intent of the piece is this. I've never succumbed to that. Well, the audience is right. Now, sometimes the audience is wrong. Just because it may be an excellent interpretation or an excellent way to look at what they're saying, or look at what they believe or what they think the interpretation is. Look at the different interpretations. But ultimately, if I write a book and I say it's about whatever. It's about what the fuck I said it was about, regardless if you got it or not. You just didn't get it if you don't come to the same conclusion.
Well, then we can go into you can go into the argument of, so if you write a book and you believe, say, rainbows and puppies, and people see cats and whatever, they didn't just pull that out of nowhere. It's not like they're just like, well, I'm going to go into this thinking about cats, and then they can go and read and cat.
I mean,
so they had to pull evidence from somewhere.
Extreme, though.
Oh, well, I know. But the thing is like, they have to pull evidence from somewhere for them to form their opinion. So if you write a book about something and somebody else interprets it differently, then is it the artist's fault because they didn't interpret what they wanted to well?
Yes. So that would be the caveat to what I said, is that if you didn't get what I put out there as the way that I put it out there, then it's ultimately my responsibility or my mistake. I didn't do a good enough job putting presenting my piece as what
but that's the nuance of art, though, is that you can be subtle with your message, and if someone picks it up or interprets it in a different way, that you will have left it because you want to be nuanced or you want to be subtle. You're open to a level of interpretation. That is a part of the experience of art. So
there is a little bit of interpretation that I will like, especially if artists says, "Hey, I'm leaving this open to interpretation." Then that's different. Then obviously they're making this to invoke thought about whatever.
Okay.
But like we're talking about this author who wrote this film, and the problem you get into with filmmaking is that if I write a film and I present my script to whoever, well, there are so many different people that are involved with producing that, with taking it off the page and putting it onto the screen, that the interpretation is going to get lost. So filmmaking is a little bit different. Yes, PhD Tony, there's only one correct way to interpret that. That is 100% accurate. But filmmaking is a little bit
strong go shite.
Yes, right. There you go. But filmmaking is a little bit different because there's so many different influences that are going into making this film that it's probably that's a less harsh rule when you're talking about film.
See, it's interesting. I dig it because, okay, so in this particular situation, I mean, in my personal opinion, you watch this movie, even if you read the book, you watch this movie, and let's see, the book came out in 1955, so this was adapted very, very quickly. If you watch this movie, in my view, it was as transparent as The Purge. Okay? The Purge is very obviously telling you what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, that is an ether-rich, corrupt government, 99 versus the 1. Absolutely, that is the mentality of those movies. The rising up against the bourgeoisie. And I felt that the Invasion of the Body Snatchers was exactly the same thing. That it feels that way to me, despite the fact that Finney and Mainwaring said flat out that they did not intend for that to happen. That was not the intention of the film. In this case, I guess, who do you think is right? Were they basically standing by their guns, saying absolutely not because they didn't want to be politically affiliated? They don't want that kind of stigma on their movie? Or is it, they really didn't intend it? Is it just happy coincidence?
And see, that's where you get into the open interpretation where we talk about the rhetoric of it, because obviously somebody, however they interpret it, is based off their own life experiences, and we can't control the life experiences of the viewer. If you make a film, you're like, hey, I'm going to pitch a movie about cats, and you come across someone who's never seen or heard a cat before, they're going to picture something completely different than somebody who, say, grew up with a bunch of cats. So to me, there's never been a right answer on maybe they intended to, maybe they didn't intend to, maybe what they intended doesn't matter. That's just what people pick up on. You make arguments for all of those.
It's interesting. I dig it. And I dig movies that are like this, that, I felt that Invasion of the Body Snatchers was somewhat obvious, but apparently it wasn't. Apparently that was not the intention. But I dig movies that do have messages like this, that are the barometers for the anxieties of America at the time, the anxieties of the world, whether it be, climate, or whether it be international relations, foreign relations, the advent of war, post-apocalypse.
That's kind of the best part about this film, is that you could take it. It was came out originally in the 50s. You can transplant it from the 50s into the 60s, and it's
which they did.
still going to be just as powerful.
Yeah,
because they did it in the 50s and put it in the 70s. The 70s Body Snatcher version was just as impactful, and then they did it again. They brought out. There's another one that's was in the was it 90?
They had one come out like in 78, like 1978, also something like that.
Let's see. There was there was Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978. There was Body Snatchers 1993, and the Invasion in 2007.
So,
and apparently an untitled fourth remake is currently in development.
Which, I mean, shows you the fact that the story transcends because it's relevant. It's still relevant to this day.
Yeah. And of course, and I know that nobody's brought it up in the chat, but somebody probably will. Definitely, it all began 1951 with oh shit. I hope we didn't lose. Yeah, okay, so apparently we may have lost Johnny due to the internet, due to his internet situation. His internet's been spotty. He just messaged me on Messenger saying that we may have lost him. Eugene, how are we looking on your end? Are we okay?
Yeah, because he popped out of the OBS chat also, so I don't even have him.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So we may have totally lost him. So just a heads up, Chad. That's why Johnny is not visible on the screen. Is that because they've been digging in his area all day long. So we may have just lost him. But I wanted to give credit. Obviously, 1951, the novel *The Puppet Masters* by Robert Heinlein is pretty much where this all kicked off. And there actually was a movie, *The Puppet Masters*, that came out, and I think remake of that was like *The Brain Eaters* or some shit like that, which is kind of cool. There was a 1994 film, *The Puppet Masters*, which is cool. Oh, is he back?
Give me a second. Go ahead and keep talking. I got to actually put him back in.
Oh, okay. And so he made it back, and we are putting him back in OBS right now. So, so many of these really, really awesome films. And I've seen a couple other people in the live chat have mentioned it. I know Jessica G was talking about how the Donald Sutherland one, Jessica said that apparently the remake shat all over the original one. Body Snatchers remake shits all over the original. Like 400-pound, 53-year-old heavy. I don't know. Yeah, conversation's got a little wonky in there, so I'm not sure where it's all at. But a lot of people didn't dig it. I thought it was a little cheesy. I thought it tried to go a little. Obviously, the whole Donald Sutherland scene. That's an epic scene. That's a legend. Like, oh, that whole thing when you realize, oh, he's been taken over, that whole kind of thing. But I thought it was a little cheesier. I like the 1953 with McCarthy. I enjoyed that one. I did enjoy Invasion, even though I thought fewer actors had less chemistry than Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman. They just did not seem to mesh at all in that movie.
We did lose Johnny again, so we'll see if he pops back up in a little bit. But talking about like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you have a film that is amazing. One of the top 50 films ever made. Don't remake films of the top 50 ever. Remake films that are bad, that had great stories. If somebody nails it, and they nail it the first time, just be done with it, because Invasion of Body Snatchers holds up today.
Agreed.
Maybe I'm back. I'm not for certain.
And Johnny O's going to try and make it back in. While he is futzing with that, while we try to get him back in OBS, I want to ask the audience, what is your favorite Body Snatchers version of any of the remakes? There have been quite a few, and we named some of them off. Whether it's or maybe you dig the Puppet Master series. If you or not the Puppet Master, the Puppet Master one's based on Heinlein's novel. Maybe you dug that one. Maybe you dug the 1994 film remake on that one. Let us know in the comments or weekinhorror@gmail.com what is your favorite version, or maybe the originals of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers franchise. Really, really good films there. If you haven't seen them, definitely check those out.